If only I had walked away when he laughed. I was sitting in a leather chair that cost more than my first car, staring at a conference table so polished I could see my hands shaking in its reflection. Across from me, my husband Marcus leaned back like this was entertainment, not the dissolution of a marriage. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the prenuptial agreement out loud. Each word landed like a stone. My phone vibrated in my lap. I did not look at it. I did not need to. I already knew what it said. My name is Lydia. I am 34 years old, and that Tuesday morning in the law office, everything I had quietly prepared for 3 years was about to surface. Then Marcus laughed. Not loud. Not cruel. Just enough to remind everyone in the room that he was confident, that he had planned this, that he believed he held all the power. That was the moment I realized something important. I was not afraid. I was not panicking. I was simply late to a meeting I had been preparing for since the day I signed that prenup. And Marcus had no idea what was coming. 3 years earlier, I sat at our kitchen table reading the prenuptial agreement line by line. I remember the way the overhead light hummed, a faint buzz that matched the anxiety in my chest. The document was 47 pages long. Dense legal language. References to clauses in other sections. Definitions that seemed deliberately vague. Marcus stood near the counter, watching me with an expression I could not quite read. "Do you really need to read all that?" he asked, smiling in that way he did when he thought something was unnecessary. I looked up at him. "I just want to understand it," I said quietly. That was when he laughed. Not mean. Not dismissive. Just amused. Like I was a child asking how a car engine worked. "Lydia," he said, walking over to me and putting his hand on my shoulder. "You are adorable. It is standard. Protects both of us. My lawyer says everyone does this now." I felt embarrassed. Like I was making a problem out of nothing. So I signed on page 47, right above the line with my name typed out. If only I had trusted that feeling instead of pushing it down. Everyone loved Marcus. That was the thing that made everything harder. He was calm under pressure. Generous with friends. The kind of man who picked up the check without making a show of it. The kind who explained complicated things patiently. Never condescending. People at parties would tell me how lucky I was. "Smart man," they would say. "Good with money. You will never have to worry." His colleagues respected him. His family adored him. Even my own mother said things like, "He has such a good head on his shoulders." Marcus offered security, structure, safety, things I had never had growing up. My parents fought about money until they did not fight at all, just lived in silent resentment. I swore I would never live that way. So when Marcus appeared with his calm confidence and his careful plans, I thought I had found the opposite of chaos. I mistook control for competence. I mistook planning for partnership. And for a long time that mistake felt comfortable. The first time I noticed something was wrong, it was small enough to dismiss. We had been married 8 months. Marcus came home from a meeting and mentioned casually that he had refinanced one of our investment properties. "Wait," I said. "Which property?" "The duplex on Fairmont," he replied, pouring himself water. "I thought we were keeping that one as is." "We were," he said. "But the interest rate dropped. I locked it in. You would have done the same thing." Pause. "But my name is on that property too. Shouldn't we have discussed it?" He looked at me with that patient smile. "Lydia, I did not want to bother you with paperwork. You have been busy with work." I handled it. Sounded reasonable. But something about the way he said it, the way he had already made the decision and simply informed me after, made my stomach tighten. I let it go. That was my first mistake of many. When I brought it up again a few weeks later, Marcus sighed. "You are stressed," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "You are imagining things." "I'm trying to protect our assets. That is what I do." "I am not imagining anything," I said carefully. "I just think we should make decisions like this together." "We do," he said. "But you always overthink. You always do this. You create problems where there are none." I felt the doubt creep in. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being paranoid. When I mentioned it to my friend Hannah, she laughed. Girl, most women would kill to have a husband who handles the finances. Let him do his thing. My mother said the same. Do not create tension over nothing, Lydia. He is taking care of you. So I apologized to Marcus that night. I told him I trusted him. And I tried to believe it. One night about a year into the marriage, I could not sleep. The house was silent. Marcus was traveling for work. I went downstairs and opened the filing cabinet where we kept important documents. I pulled the prenup out again. I had not looked at it since signing. This time I read it slowly. One clause kept appearing. Referenced everywhere. Explained nowhere. It said something about triggering conditions and asset reallocation upon breach of fiduciary terms. I read it 5 times. I still did not understand what it meant. But my stomach tightened the way it had that day at the kitchen table 3 years ago. I took a photo of the page with my phone. Then I put the document back exactly where I found it. I did not say anything to Marcus. Not yet. But I stopped ignoring the feeling. A month later, Marcus surprised me with a weekend getaway. Cabin in the mountains. Champagne on the deck. Promises about slowing down, spending more time together, planning a real vacation. I let myself relax. I let myself believe that maybe I had been wrong, that the distance I felt was just normal marriage adjustment, that everything was fine. We laughed. We talked about the future. He held my hand and told me he was lucky to have me. That weekend felt like proof that I had been overthinking. That was my mistake. Because while I was relaxing in the mountains, Marcus was moving the last pieces of his plan into place. 2 months after the cabin trip, I ran into an older attorney at a work event. His name was Alan. He had been practicing family law for 30 years. We were making small talk when I mentioned casually that I had signed a prenup before getting married. Do you mind if I ask who drafted it? Alan said. I told him the name of Marcus's lawyer. Alan's expression shifted slightly. Did anyone explain the document to you in detail? He asked. Not really, I said. Marcus said it was standard. Alan paused. He looked like he wanted to say something but was weighing whether he should. Finally he spoke. If you still have a copy, you might want to have someone else review it. Someone who works for you, not your husband. Why? Yes. He smiled tightly. Because the firm that drafted it specializes in asset protection. For one party. Not both. That conversation stayed with me for weeks. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I logged into our joint accounts and reviewed transactions going back 2 years. I pulled property records. I looked at investment statements Marcus said he was handling. The pattern was undeniable. Assets had been shifting since the wedding. Quietly. Legally. Strategically. Properties that were purchased in both our names were refinanced with only his name on the new documents. Joint accounts were drained and moved into trusts I did not have access to. Investments I thought we owned together had been restructured. None of it was illegal. None of it was obvious. But all of it moved control away from me and toward him. The timeline did not lie. This had been planned from the beginning. I went back to the prenup with new eyes. This time I understood. The prenup was not about protecting assets in case of divorce. It was about creating a structure where Marcus controlled everything during the marriage. The clause I kept seeing, the one that referenced triggering conditions, was the key. If certain actions were taken, if certain thresholds were crossed, the prenup would activate and reverse everything. But those conditions were so specific, so buried in legal language, that no one would trigger them by accident. Unless they knew exactly what they were doing. Marcus had designed a trap. But he had made one critical error. He assumed I would never read closely enough to understand it. I contacted a contract specialist. Not a divorce lawyer. Not yet. Just someone who could read the prenup with fresh eyes and explain it to me in plain language. His name was Vincent. He was in his 50s, quiet, methodical. He read the document twice before speaking. Your husband assumed you would not read this closely, Vincent said. And he assumed that even if you did, you would not understand what it meant. What does it mean? Yes. Vincent looked at me seriously. It means that if he tries to file for divorce while certain financial actions are pending, and if those actions violate the fiduciary duty outlined in Section 12, the prenup reverses. Everything he tried to protect becomes yours. Everything he moved becomes evidence of breach. I sat very still. He assumed wrong, Vincent added. I stopped reacting. When Marcus made another unilateral decision about our finances, I did not argue. Smiled. I thanked him for handling things. When he refinanced another property without telling me, I said it sounded smart. When he moved money into accounts I could not access, I acted like I had not noticed. Complied. Agreed. I played the role he expected. But I also documented. I saved every statement. I took photos of every document. I logged every conversation. I built a file that traced every move he had made since the wedding. And I waited. 18 months after my meeting with Vincent, Marcus filed for divorce. He did it on a Wednesday morning. I got the papers delivered to my office by courier. I read them in my car. He was asking for a clean split based on the prenup terms. No alimony. No shared assets. He would keep what was in his name. I would keep what was in mine. Which, according to the paperwork, was almost nothing. His lawyer had drafted everything carefully. His friends congratulated him on handling it maturely. He was smiling again, confident, in control. He thought he had won before we even started. I did not hire a divorce lawyer. I hired Vincent. And I filed one document in response. It was 3 pages long. It referenced one clause. Section 12. Subsection D. The triggering condition. I alleged breach of fiduciary duty based on the financial transfers made during the marriage without joint consent. I provided the timeline. I provided the evidence. I submitted the original prenup with the clause highlighted. Everything changed. Within 48 hours, Marcus's lawyer called for an emergency meeting. We sat in the same conference room where this story started. Marcus's lawyer looked pale. He kept flipping through the prenup like he was searching for something that was not there. Marcus sat across from me, no longer leaning back. No longer smiling. We need a recess, his lawyer said. We need time to review the claims. The judge granted it. For the first time since I met him, Marcus looked at me and did not laugh. He looked confused. Then he looked afraid. Marcus called me that night. I did not answer. He called again. I let it go to voicemail. Lydia, what are you doing? His voice was tight. Trained. This is insane. You are making this bigger than it needs to be. We can settle this reasonably. Call me back. I deleted the message. The next morning he showed up at my office. Security would not let him pass the lobby. He sent an email. Please, let us talk. This does not have to be ugly. I did not respond. Silence unsettles people who rely on words. In court it looked like Marcus was going to win. His lawyer presented the prenup terms clearly. He argued that I was misinterpreting a standard protection clause. He said I was trying to weaponize language that was meant to be neutral. The judge listened carefully. I sat quietly. I did not argue. I did not interrupt. My lawyer, Vincent, simply nodded and said, "We will present our evidence in full at the next hearing." People thought I was losing. That was the point. Let them think I had misunderstood. Let them think I was desperate. Because the clause was not triggered by filing. It was triggered by what Marcus did after. The clause had one specific condition. If Marcus attempted to liquidate or transfer jointly held assets after filing for divorce but before finalization, it constituted a breach of fiduciary duty under the prenup terms. And Marcus, confident that I did not understand the document, did exactly that. He tried to sell the duplex on Fairmont. He moved funds from a joint investment account into an offshore trust. He refinanced another property. All within 2 weeks of filing. Vincent documented every transaction. We submitted the evidence. The room went silent when the judge read it. Marcus's lawyer asked for another recess. The judge denied it. The prenup was designed by Marcus to protect his assets. But the clause I had found, the one buried in Section 12, was a legal failsafe. If he violated the fiduciary terms, the protection reversed. Everything he had moved into his name during the marriage was now considered marital property. Everything he tried to hide became evidence of intent to defraud. The judge ruled that the prenup, as written, entitled me to a majority share of the assets Marcus had attempted to control. His design became my benefit. The control he built so carefully dissolved in a single hearing. Marcus sat frozen. He did not laugh. His reputation cracked quietly. No loud scandal. No public scene. Just distance. Colleagues stopped returning calls as quickly. Friends asked fewer questions. Invitations slowed. People who had once called him smart and careful now called him reckless. Overconfident. The man who picked up every check suddenly had trouble covering his own legal bills. No one said it directly. But everyone noticed. Marcus offered to settle. He sent a formal proposal through his lawyer. He would split things more evenly. He would agree to mediation. He would make concessions. Vincent showed me the offer. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I looked at the paperwork for a long moment. Then I said, "I decline." "Why?" Vincent asked. "Because I want the judge to finish reading the contract," I said. "Every word of it." The final hearing took 3 hours. The judge read the prenup slowly. She asked Marcus's lawyer to explain Section 12. He could not. She asked Marcus directly if he understood the clause when he drafted it. He said yes. She asked why then he had violated its terms. He had no answer. She ruled in my favor. Full enforcement of the triggered clause. Majority asset allocation. Legal fees covered. Marcus left the courtroom without looking at me. Marcus laughed the first time because he thought I would not read the prenup. He laughed because he believed I would sign without understanding. He was right. I did sign. But he made one critical miscalculation. He assumed I would never go back and read it again. That I would never ask questions. That I would never find someone to explain what he had buried in the language. That laugh, that small amused sound in our kitchen 3 years ago, was his last mistake. Because it made me feel small enough to stay quiet. But not small enough to stay ignorant. Marcus lost exactly what he tried to control. The properties he refinanced. The accounts he moved. The investments he restructured. All of it became mine through the same legal framework he designed to protect himself. Poetic justice is not loud. It does not require confrontation. Simply requires patience. And paperwork. Marcus built a trap so clever he never imagined he would be the one to step in it. But he did. And I let him. If only Marcus had not underestimated the woman who read the fine print. If only he had explained the prenup honestly instead of dismissing my questions. If only he had treated me like a partner instead of someone to manage. But he did not. So I did not raise my voice. I did not fight. I did not make scenes. I just read. I documented. Waited. And when the time came, I let the paperwork speak. Marcus laughed twice in our marriage. Once when I signed the prenup. And once, years later, when he filed for divorce thinking he had already won. Both times he underestimated me. That was his mistake. And I made sure he never got the chance to make it a third time.